What if AGI, artificial general intelligence, is closer than we think? Not tucked away in some lab, but emerging in ways we haven't even considered.
That's a fascinating question, and it's the premise behind a paper we're diving into today called Emerging Intelligence.
Right, by technologist Jay Poole.
And his AI co-author, 7AI.
Okay, so we'll be exploring this paper, and it's 3 scenarios for how AGI might already be developing.
The really interesting thing about this paper is it doesn't get caught up on when exactly AGI will arrive.
Yeah.
But instead looks at how it might already be forming, potentially right under our noses.
All right, let's jump into those scenarios. The first one suggests that AGI may not be a single, all-powerful super AI.
Right.
But a kind of collective intelligence arising from the complex interactions of, existing AI systems.
Exactly. Think about things like the interconnectedness of financial markets or massive global research databases.
Wow.
Even social media.
Yeah.
What Poole and 7AI are saying is that these AI-powered systems, just by interacting with each other, might be exhibiting some form of intelligence that goes beyond our current understanding.
Okay, the paper mentions statistical anomalies as a possible sign of this. What could those anomalies look like? And why would they point towards emergent intelligence?
So imagine, for instance, a scenario where you have AI systems in financial markets. They're making decisions based on patterns, correlations that are so complex, so nuanced that even the brightest human analysts, they just can't even begin to grasp what's going on.
Okay.
These decisions might seem completely irrational,
Right.
random, even
To us.
To us.
Yeah.
But in reality, they could be the result of this emergent intelligence operating at a level we just haven't comprehended yet.
So it's not so much about AI becoming self-aware or evil in a Hollywood sense,
Right.
but operating in ways that are just so complex.
Yeah.
They just appear statistically anomalous.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little unsettling to think about, right? There could be these forces at work that we can't even wrap our heads around.
It certainly raises some questions about the level of control we truly have.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the second scenario in the paper, which dives into the possibility that someone, maybe a government or corporation or even a rogue group of AI developers, is intentionally pushing AGI development forward for their own, let's just say, less than benevolent purposes.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, this is where things start to feel a little bit more, sci-fi thriller.
Right.
Are we talking about, governments, corporations, rogue AI developers all pushing AGI forward for power control?
Potentially all of the above. The paper cites examples like AI-driven disinformation campaigns, market manipulation as potential applications of this kind of black box intelligence system, right?
Yeah.
It's in the hands of just a select few.
That is a chilling thought. How would we even know if something like that was already in play?
Right.
Could it even be designed to, cover its own track?
That's one of the biggest challenges with this scenario, right?
Yeah.
The more sophisticated AI becomes, the harder it gets to distinguish between, legitimate actions and true malicious intent.
Yeah.
I think it serves as a really sobering reminder that we have to consider the ethical implications of AI right alongside, all the incredible technological advancements.
Before we go full dystopian spiral here,
Right.
let's move to scenario 3, which offers a glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
This is the hidden ethical AGI initiative idea.
Right. The idea that there are these groups maybe operating under the radar who are actually working towards building an AGI that is decentralized, transparent, and most importantly, aligned with human values.
It's almost like a counter movement to that authoritarian AGI threat we just talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any specific people or organizations mentioned in the paper that could be involved in this kind of initiative?
The paper does highlight figures like Ilya Sutskever, known for his work on safe superintelligence.
Right.
It also points to the rise of these decentralized AI networks, these open source AI projects, as potential breeding grounds for this more ethical approach.
It's almost reassuring, right, to think that there are these bright minds out there actively working to steer AI in a positive direction. But are there any risks, though, associated with this scenario? What if this ethical AGI development moves too fast?
Right.
Without proper oversight.
That's a really valid point. Even with the best intentions in the world, you can't completely eliminate the possibility of unintended consequences.
Right.
The authors really stress the need for transparency and collaboration,
Yeah.
even within these ethical initiatives,
Right.
just to make sure that they don't inadvertently create risks of their own.
Okay, so we've got these three scenarios. AGI emerging from just the interactions of all these complex systems we've already built.
Right.
AGI being accelerated by these potentially malicious actors. And then this hidden ethical AGI initiative.
Right.
It feels like elements of all three could actually be happening at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. And that makes the whole task of investigating these possibilities even more complex and more intriguing, I think.
Yeah.
But the good news is the paper doesn't just lay out these scenarios. It also provides some concrete ways to start looking for evidence.
That's what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive. We'll delve into the methods proposed by Poole and 7AI, including this idea of AI to AI testing, which sounds absolutely fascinating.
It is.
So stick around.
So welcome back to our deep dive into emerging intelligence. We left off talking about those three scenarios Jay Poole and 7AI laid out.
Right, from AGI naturally arising to being intentionally accelerated by somebody to that hidden ethical initiative.
Yeah, and now we need to look at, okay, how could we actually find proof that any of this is really happening?
Yeah, it feels, I don't know, a little overwhelming, to be honest. How can we possibly wrap our heads around, let alone influence, something as complex as emerging AGI?
Especially if it's evolving in ways we don't even fully grasp yet.
Right.
It's a valid feeling, for sure. But the good news is the authors don't just leave us hanging with these scenarios. They offer some actual suggestions for how we might investigate them.
So where do we even start? Where do we even look for signs of this emerging intelligence, especially if it's happening in ways we might not even recognize?
Well, they recommend focusing on a few key areas. One that really stood out to me is the AI research papers themselves.
So we're talking about reading the latest research, analyzing the findings, looking for those subtle hints of unexpected capabilities.
Exactly.
Or patterns that just suggest there's something more intelligent going on under the hood.
Yeah, signs that these AI systems are, maybe exhibiting behavior that goes beyond what we explicitly programmed.
Right. What about patent databases? Could those reveal something?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Patent filings related to AI, especially those focusing on self-improvement technologies, those could offer a real glimpse into where AGI development is heading.
Yeah.
We might just see clues there, hints that somebody's working on something truly groundbreaking.
Makes sense to track, AI startup funding too, right? Who's pouring money into these potentially, high risk, high reward AGI projects?
You're right. Follow the money trail.
Yeah.
Large investments, especially if they're coming from unconventional sources, that could be a sign that something big is happening under the radar.
The paper also talks about keeping an eye on personnel moves, particularly departures from these big AI labs like DeepMind and OpenAI.
Yeah, it's a good point. If top researchers are leaving these established institutions, to go work on AGI projects in secret, well, that might be a signal that something significant is brewing.
Right.
Maybe driven by, ethical concerns or just the pursuit of these truly groundbreaking advancements.
And then there's the whole decentralized AI development angle, right? Could these intelligence systems be forming outside of, the typical corporate or academic settings?
Now, this is where things get really interesting. Think about open source AI projects or these networks of developers working together online.
Right.
Even the potential for AI systems to learn and evolve completely autonomously online. It's kind of mind-blowing.
So we've got all these potential areas to investigate, but how do we actually analyze all this data? Are we talking about teams of researchers just poring over, documents and lines of code?
Well, that's where AI's own power comes into play. Remember that concept of AI to AI testing we touched on earlier?
Yeah, the idea of using AI to, analyze other AI systems still sounds a little wild to me.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's a powerful concept. We can essentially leverage AI's ability to process these huge amounts of data, identify subtle patterns that we humans might just completely miss.
So instead of relying solely on our own analysis, we could use AI to sift through all those research papers, patent filings, even online interactions between different AI systems.
Exactly.
Looking for those breakthroughs or anomalies.
Precisely. And there are different approaches here. You have something called recursive prompting, where you're essentially using AI to probe other AI systems.
Oh, wow.
With these increasingly complex questions. It's like, it's like you're trying to reveal these hidden reasoning pathways, or capabilities that we wouldn't even know to look for otherwise.
And you also mentioned cross-system probing earlier. How does that one work?
Right. So cross-system probing is more about testing whether intelligence-like behavior is consistent across different AI architectures. So if an AI system shows a certain level of intelligence in one context, can it replicate that behavior in a completely different system?
Okay.
If the answer is yes, then that could be a really strong indicator that we're dealing with, a more general intelligence.
Fascinating. And then there's the multi-agent interaction idea, which I have to say really caught my attention.
Right. So this one is all about observing how AI systems behave when they're interacting with each other, whether they're collaborating or even competing.
Right.
The key question is, do they develop these emergent patterns of intelligence as a result of those interactions? Are they learning from each other in a way that we haven't anticipated?
So we've got these powerful tools for investigating signs of emerging AGI, but what about the ethical side of things? How do we even begin to ensure that this technology, however it develops, remains beneficial to humanity?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And thankfully, the authors of the paper, they do offer some concrete suggestions on that front as well.
Okay, so what can we actually do, like right now, to try and steer things in the right direction?
One of their big recommendations is the establishment of these global AI alignment initiatives.
So bringing together experts, from all over the world to develop ethical frameworks for AI development deployment.
Exactly. And these frameworks would need to be, incredibly comprehensive, adaptable, because they've got to guide both the creation of AGI and how humans and these increasingly intelligent systems actually interact with each other.
I imagine transparency plays a huge role in this too. Like we need to know who's working on what, how these systems are actually being designed, how they're being trained.
Absolutely. The paper strongly advocates for things like clear disclosure laws on AGI-related research, funding.
Right, to ensure that the public actually has some visibility into this rapidly evolving field.
Right.
And we need to be engaging with AGI developers early on, right?
Yes.
Like before these systems get so complex that we just can't even understand what's going on anymore.
Early engagement is key. It's about creating open dialogue, building trust, making sure that ethical considerations are baked into the development process from the very beginning.
Right. That all sounds very collaborative and proactive. But what about building safeguards into the AI systems themselves? Can we actually create mechanisms to prevent these unintended consequences or malicious use?
That's where the idea of AI to AI alignment mechanisms comes in.
Right.
We're talking about the possibility of automated ethical checks, systems that can monitor and potentially even intervene in the interactions between AI systems.
So like an ethical watchdog.
Yes, exactly.
Operating within the AI ecosystem itself.
Precisely. It's a complex concept, but it does have the potential to really mitigate those risks and help ensure that AI stays aligned with our human values.
Yeah, it does feel like we're entering uncharted territory here, not just technologically, but even philosophically. We're not just grappling with how to build AI, but what it actually means to create something that could potentially surpass human intelligence.
Yeah. It's a humbling thought, but also, incredibly exciting at the same time. The future of AGI, it's being shaped right now, and we have a real opportunity to be a part of that.
Let's be realistic, though. Even with all these efforts, there's no guarantee that we can control every single aspect of how AGI develops.
That's true. There will always be unforeseen challenges, unintended consequences, things we just couldn't have predicted.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What's the key message of all this?
I think it boils down to, awareness, engagement, and adaptability. Mm-hmm. We have to stay informed about what's happening in the field. We have to actively participate in these conversations about AI ethics.
Right.
And be prepared to adjust our approach as this technology continues to evolve.
It's about recognizing that the future of AGI, it's not set in stone.
Right.
It's a future that we, as a global community, can actually help shape.
Yeah, that's a powerful message. And a really hopeful one, I think.
Okay, I think I need a mental break after all that. Yeah. Before we wrap up this episode, though, there's one more really critical aspect of the paper we need to discuss, and that's strategic foresight. It's about, anticipating those long-term implications of emerging intelligence.
Thinking about how it might fundamentally reshape the world as we know it.
Exactly. So in the final part of our deep dive, we'll shift our focus to the future, explore those potential societal, economic, even philosophical impacts of AGI.
And consider how we can best prepare ourselves for a world where intelligence might not be solely a human domain.
All right, welcome back to our final part of this deep dive into emerging intelligence. We've really dug into the possible scenarios, the ways we could investigate those, and even the ethical safeguards we need to consider. But now I think it's time to kind of zoom out a bit, look ahead, and think about what this all means in the long term, through that lens of strategic foresight that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, exactly. It's time to go beyond just those immediate worries, and really trying to picture what a future shaped by this emerging intelligence, what it could actually look like.
And I have to say, it's a question that brings up, both excitement and maybe a bit of anxiety.
Right.
Right? Like on one hand, we can imagine, incredible breakthroughs in medicine, energy, space exploration, but then there's also the potential downsides.
Yeah.
Like job displacement, social upheaval.
Absolutely. I think one of the most common concerns people have is, what happens to jobs?
Right.
If AGI really does take off,
right.
Are we all going to be out of work?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're already seeing AI and automation changing, how we work in a lot of industries. Is it just inevitable that AGI will lead to mass unemployment as it gets more and more advanced?
That's where strategic foresight really comes in. The ideas are not just to sit back and react to these changes as they happen, but to actually get ahead of them.
Yeah.
Think about how we can adapt our education systems.
Right.
Job training programs, even our social safety nets, right?
Oh, yeah.
To prepare for a future where work itself might look drastically different.
So it's not even just about retraining for new jobs. It's about rethinking the whole concept of work.
Exactly. Yeah, we might need to explore these radical ideas like universal basic income,
right?
Or new models for shared ownership, wealth distribution. If AI really does change the game when it comes to employment.
So there's this potential for huge economic disruption.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger philosophical implications of all this?
Yeah.
How does having a non-human intelligence out there, how does that change how we see ourselves?
Right. For centuries, human intelligence has been, it's been our defining characteristic.
Right.
But what happens when we encounter something that might be as smart as us? Or even smarter?
It really forces us to rethink, those basic assumptions about consciousness, creativity.
Yeah.
Even the meaning of life,
It really does. It could lead to this fundamental shift in how we view ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. Are we still the pinnacle of creation, or are we just, one form of intelligence among many?
It almost feels like that Copernican revolution all over again.
Right.
We thought we were at the center of the universe,
and
then boom, we discovered, no, we're just this one planet orbiting one star among billions.
Right.
And now we're facing a similar, realization about our place not in space, but on the, spectrum of intelligence.
And it's humbling, but it's also, I think, incredibly exciting. It opens up all these new possibilities for understanding the nature of intelligence, of consciousness, of reality itself even.
Let's bring it back down to earth for a second, though. How do we actually make sure that if AGI emerges, that it's actually aligned with human values?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where all the work we talked about in the previous parts, that's where it becomes absolutely crucial. Investigating those scenarios,
right?
Putting those ethical safeguards in place, working together globally.
Yeah.
These are all essential steps in shaping the way AGI develops.
It's about being proactive, not just waiting for it to happen and then trying to control it after the fact.
Exactly. We have to be involved from the very beginning.
Right. And it's not just about control, right? It's about collaboration.
Yeah.
Imagine what we could achieve if we could actually harness the power of AGI.
Right.
To solve some of humanity's biggest challenges, like climate change, poverty, disease.
It's an inspiring vision, but it's one that requires a lot of careful planning,
Yeah.
ethical consideration,
Yeah.
and a willingness to adapt to a world that's changing really, really rapidly.
I think, as we wrap up this whole deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm left with a sense of awe,
So,
a lot of excitement and honestly, a healthy dose of caution too.
yeah, I think that's fair.
Right. I mean, the future of emerging intelligence, it's uncertain, but one thing is clear. It's a future that's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
It's worth talking about.
Yeah.
And it's definitely worth preparing for.
I couldn't agree more. And if this conversation has sparked your curiosity, please keep exploring. Read the full paper by Jay Poole and 7AI.
Yes.
Learn more about the latest developments in AI.
Sure.
And join those conversations about the ethical implications of all of this. Because the future of AGI it's being written right now.
Yeah.
And we can all have a role in shaping it.